Welcome to the Blue Dog Whisperer. It is a very nice and humid Memorial Day weekend, and I am joined by a very special Jersey guest, my home state, Matthew Jenkins, who is running for Congress in New Jersey's 4th District. It is great to have you.
Thank you for having me, Evan. I appreciate it.
So let's get started. You are running in a district that has become progressively more Republican. The last Republican to win, I'm sorry, the last Democratic presidential candidate to win CD4 was Al Gore in 2000. President Trump won this district twice, President Bush won it twice, and it's very definitely right of center. And due to redistricting, CD4 has become even more Republican. Uh,
Yes.
I think the most competitive race in CD4 was in 2018 when Josh Welly ran against Chris Smith, and that was when it was a little more Democratic or more moderate.
Yes.
Obviously, this is a problem because Chris Smith has been in Congress since Jimmy Carter was president. So, uh, what do you make of why do you think Chris Smith has been in Congress for so long, and what do you plan to do differently from the other Democratic candidates?
So, like you said, he ran during the Carter administration and he went into office with Ronald Reagan. He had lost his first election and he ran again. And the second one, his opponent was actually indicted in the Abscam scandal. I don't say if you remember that because you probably don't remember it, but you certainly might have read about it. And he
I
was
don't.
last man
I was
standing.
I was pre-fetus, so I don't remember
Yes. Yes, the twinkle in your daddy's eye back then.
before embryo.
Yes. So, but a full person, according to Chris Smith.
Yes.
It
Uh,
has gotten progressively more red over time, but I think part of that is because there just hasn't been a big Democratic presence. Uh, Again, as you said, Josh Welly came in. He was a good candidate, but since there weren't good candidates running before him, and there have been a few, I don't want to knock everybody. Uh, the local Democrats are just not prepared to step in and go again. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we've had is, Josh ran once, Stephanie ran once. So when I decided I was going to run, I told him right from the beginning, I'm going at least twice. So I think that's a big thing. We learned what to do. I got to know the players involved, and it just put us in a much better place to run this time.
so you were the Democratic candidate in 2022, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So for those of my listeners who don't know New Jersey, uh, CD4 is in Monmouth and Ocean County, so basically Jersey Shore counties. Ocean County is the most Republican county in the state when it comes to which county voted most heavily for former President Trump. It is very, very right wing. I don't even want to say conservative because I think the Republican Party has lost its uh, its um, its moral compass, and I don't think that what they're promoting today is conservatism. Uh,
I like to call that a self-anointed title and not a description.
right, right. I mean, conservatism and liberalism to me are both respectable ideologies, and what I'm seeing now is regressive. It's not. I mean, it's nothing normal, but this makes your work more difficult for you because this is increased partisanship on both sides. But in your case, you're in a right wing district. So, what lessons did you learn from 2022 that you're going to apply this time?
Well, this is up to me. And I found this out as a candidate. And it was funny. I can remember one of my first meetings last time. Um, I won't mention the guy's name, but he was like, so the Democratic Party, they give you a campaign manager and help you. And that's just not how it goes. You realize how alone you are in a red district like this as a Democrat when you try to run, which is one of the reasons that I decided to take on this challenge at all. Everybody, I like to think, goes through that time in their life where they're like, what can I do to make this world a little bit better? Like, what can I do to leave it better than the way that I found it? I have stood on soup line kitchens and ladled food. I've helped different homeless people. I volunteered here and there, but I was like, with my skill set, what can I really do? I was an entrepreneur for a number of years. I was a general contractor. I had a custom furniture business, and my job was to literally do everything as the contractor. Sometimes, I always had to get the client. Sometimes I got the architect. I always had to get the workers. I had to deal with the city. And I always had to bring everybody together to work on a single project to bring it to fruition. And I thought to myself, like, working as a candidate and trying to bring yourself forward as a candidate, you really need to do that. You've got to get everybody on board. And especially in a red district like this, I can't win with just Democrats. I need independents. I need like-minded Republicans. As you were talking about before, like, liberalism and conservatism, I personally don't like those definitions, because if you say, well, like, I'm a liberal, then they try to grab a bunch of things and like nail them to you and say, oh, you believe in this because you said you're a liberal. Well, maybe ask me how I feel about those before you try to pigeonhole me on that. Whether it's progressive, whether it's right wing, whether it's conservative, I really do not like those titles. Ask me specifically about something, and I'm more than happy to answer it.
I agree with you because the truth is everyone has conservatism and liberalism in them. We are all cocktails. If someone says I'm a staunch liberal, you're not. If you're a staunch conservative, you really aren't. So I get exactly what you're saying. Uh, that said, a lot of people are very apprehensive about voting for the Democratic Party in your district, and you do need some of those Republican and independent voters. So I want to know, what are some of the biggest issues you are going to campaign on this cycle?
The biggest one with Chris Smith is women's reproductive rights. He believes in no abortion at any time.
Mhm.
Uh, this is proven in his actions, not just in his words. And I really like to focus on people do, not on what they say. Because when you're running a campaign, people have a tendency to say something. And in politics, you try to sort of muddy the message if your message is not always that popular. I'll give you an example. In 2011, Kenya, who had a full abortion ban, was going to change their constitution to allow for the health of the mother to be protected. Now, Congressman Smith, he sits on a subcommittee to Africa, and he used that position to fly over there immediately to give speeches and try to block that change. He feels that even helping protect a woman's health is nothing but a slippery slope to abortion on demand. And he says we just cannot have it. So that's really the biggest thing. When we're looking at the Republicans and how they vote, I believe Chris Smith beat Trump by 5 points last time. There were a number of people who walked into the booth. They looked up at that top line and they said, nope. And they went to Smith and then voted red down the line. Now, whether they voted Democrat or just didn't vote in the presidential election at all, I don't know. But that tells me that they are willing to make decisions that are not just, I'm a Republican and just go right on down the board. They are looking for what they believe in. So that's really the biggest thing. It's a complicated subject, and I really don't think people know all the different pieces of it. They have a tendency to look and say, well, abortion, some 20-year-old kids who don't want to use protection, and they just want to use it as a form of birth control. And it's just not the case. And as Chris Smith likes to say, as Democrats want to have abortion right up until birth, which is just not true. It makes people angry. It drives them to the voting booth, but it's just not true. You look at a woman who's 7, 8 months pregnant. There is not a hospital or a healthcare provider in the country that is going to give a woman with a healthy fetus an abortion. It just doesn't happen. But when a woman who's in agony, who's bleeding, goes into an emergency room, and this is already happening in many states, the doctors just don't want to help. And they are worried about being sued. And so the woman is, she'll just go home and come back if it gets worse. Well, and they're like, well, I'm in agony. There's blood all over the place. How much worse do you want it to get? The Supreme Court, well, I say Idaho was arguing before the Supreme Court, and they were discussing how many organs can they allow to fail before they're obligated to help. I mean, these discussions to me are disgusting. And for some lucky women, they are able to be airlifted to a free state where they're able to get the health care that they need. And this isn't happening on the one-offs. I remember the poor young girl in Ohio. She was raped. She was 10 years old, and she had to go out of state. And people are looking at it as this one-off. I think there's like 29,000 women in the country right now who are pregnant as a product of rape. 29,000. These are not one-off things. So it's a much bigger problem, and people really need to know what's happening before they make these decisions.
Well, there are many towns in your district that have populations less than that. So imagine a whole town had suffered that horrible crime, and then maybe people will think a little differently about that. So I get what you're saying, and the fact that we have the Supreme Court talking about how many organs a woman has to have fail before she can access her choice to terminate a pregnancy sounds a lot like the death panels that we were told Obama wanted. This whole thing just reeks of government intrusiveness, and it seems kind of like a religious law. To be honest with you, it seems kind of like yeah, it kind of seems like that. So,
If you look across America, every time that this has been put on the ballot, even in a place like Ruby Red, Kentucky, it was the primary. Most people are not showing up for the primary. And you have to be a registered Republican or a registered Democrat to even vote in the primary, unless there are items on the ballot that you can vote for. And I think it's like 125,000 people showed up just to vote on whether they should allow abortion to continue in the state. And they did. And that is in a red state. So what America is showing is that they want access to abortion. Now, we can negotiate and talk about what that really means, but they definitely want the right completely taken away from them. So if this is what America wants, and you still have politicians are saying, we're taking it away anyway, to me, if I was a Republican, I would really be thinking twice before I voted for them. Because like, okay, like I might not want abortion, but I know darn well most of America does, and you're going to take it away from them anyway. What happens when most of America wants to keep something that I actually want, and you're going to take that away because that's what your religion tells you or what your personal feelings tell you? Things like that make me really nervous. There is way too much government intervention there.
right. And one could argue that if government is going to tell a woman what she can and can't do regarding her health care, then government has an obligation to pay for the health care. But of course, we can't do that. So you make some excellent points regarding a woman's right to choose. And I do think that there is a bit of a disconnect between Republican voters and Republican politicians, because I think most Republicans are where you and I are. We want choice. We want the government out of our pocketbooks and our bedrooms. But when it comes to this, there are a lot of religiously motivated corporations and nonprofits that are committed to not only getting what they wanted originally, which was to overturn Roe v. Wade, like the Federalist Society and all those other groups, but now they want the states to outlaw it and potentially have Congress implement an abortion ban.
Right. I mean, we could go on all day about this subject. I mean, Chris Smith, he not only wants no abortion, he's tried to criminalize contraception. He's even gone so far as to add language to bills that would change the definition of rape. And in his opinion, if a woman has not put up enough of a fight, well, she should not be able to say that she was raped. Uh, it so this subject, like again, like I said, we could just go on and on talking about all the different parts of this. And to me, it's all about control. I mean, one of the Trump's biggest backers now are evangelical Christians. If you go back through history to like 1970, 1980, they did not care about abortion. Jerry Falwell, who was their leader, what he cared about was not allowing the races to mix.
Mm-hmm.
And what he says, what God, we should not put together what God tore asunder.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, that was not socially acceptable to be talking like that. So they were looking for another way to gain power. And they saw that the Catholic Church really had a strong hold through abortion, and they hopped onto that. So that's where they came into this subject.
Right. And it really is disappointing and frightening that they're making women wards of the state. So what are some of the issues that are really important to your district and to yourself that you will be running on?
We'll take immigration. This is a big one. This is one of those things where I think my personal background would help about getting the different people together to actually solve the problem. When politics steps in, it becomes very difficult. I mean, you can look at Senator Langford's bill. He is a very conservative Republican. He was asked to negotiate a bill with Democrats. He did. The Republicans in Congress were on board. Mike Johnson was on board. Mitch McConnell was on board. This bill would have allowed President Biden to shut the border immediately. This is the one thing that they've been screaming about, and it gave President Biden the ability to do it. The problem is it could solve the problem. Now you don't have a campaign issue. Trump stepped in and said, kill it. And immediately they went to war against Democrats on immigration again, even though they are the ones that are blocking that bill. There are so many different pieces to this. I'll start going. If you want to cut me off anytime, you go right ahead. But to me, there are two groups, main groups of people. You have the people that are here, then you have the people that want to come here. We can't deal with the people who want to come here unless we know what we're going to do with when they get here. One of those groups is the DACA recipients. Make them citizens right now. Day one, full stop. These are people that have been here since they were 2 years old. They don't know another country. They have grown up here. They have gone to school here. Many have gone to college here. They are working. They are contributing. Make them citizens. For the other, I don't know, 10 million people, we need to decide what to do with them. And self-deportation is not the answer. Now, we can negotiate what to do with them. One of my ideas is some type of legal status. Now, someone who has broken the law, who has lived under the radar all these years, maybe they don't become full citizens at all. I think that's a slippery slope because now you're talking about people who could be considered second-class citizens, and I wouldn't want that. But allow these people legal status so that they can actually live here, work here without the fear of being deported. Then we can start to work on all the people that want to come here. Now, if you look at Governor Abbott down in Texas, what he could have done was gone to the group of governors, which there is, and there's a president. My own governor here in New Jersey was the head of it for a while. He could have gone to the governors of the states and says, look, I have a problem here. This is my solution. That is not what he did. He got a bunch of buses together and started dropping off migrants in the middle of the night in different cities in order to inflict this problem on them, in order to get news organizations to start looking into it. If you look at Ron DeSantis, I've talked to a number of Republicans down in Florida, even here, and they're talking about the illegals that were dropped off in Martha's Vineyard. Number one, they are not illegal. When we allow them to come in and they present themselves to border security, they are now obeying our laws and they have legal status to be here. Now, they might not be able to stay, but they are not here illegally. Now, what did Governor DeSantis do? Took a plane with taxpayer money, sent it to Florida, picked up a bunch of migrants, then flew them to Florida because you can't kick people out of Florida unless you bring them there first, then flew them from Florida up to Martha's Vineyard and then dropped them off in the middle of the night and then said, look at those illegals up there. Not illegal. They didn't show up there. They were dropped off there by Ron DeSantis. This is not going to solve any problem. Now, again, we can negotiate all these issues, but certain cities can be set up to accept so many migrants. And then we can allow that many in and then close the border. Once we've cleared that system, we can allow more to come in. And all that stuff can be negotiated. But right now, it's all politics, and there is just no solution coming down the board.
Well, I've always been a little confused about why Abbott and DeSantis did that, because if they were illegal, isn't it a crime to transport illegal immigrants across state lines?
Yes.
That's what makes no sense. They're actually, I mean, technically they've admitted they've committed a crime if in fact these people were here illegally. And we know that I mean, if they did, if all these people, if it's confirmed that they did apply for asylum and they're waiting for their court dates, then they are obeying the legal process. I just want to know, what do you think should happen with the people here illegally who have committed crimes besides their illegal entry or overstaying their visas? Should they be deported?
It would depend on the country that's going and what's going to happen to them. Some of them, it might be better for them to stay here in our penal system. Um, if they're going to go back to a country and the conditions are going to be absolutely horrendous, I say they stay here and they pay their punishment here. But for the rest, deport them all.
All right, interesting. And you know, you brought up an excellent point about Senator Lankford and how all the Republicans were on board. One of the things that I don't hear a lot of Democrats talking about is the GOP historically has been softer on illegal immigration than the Democratic Party. And it's because a lot of their corporate friends have hired people here illegally because it's cheaper labor. And Donald Trump himself was fined for hiring illegal immigrants. Do you think that in addition to kicking the can down the road for political purposes, that there is some corporate interference with why they weren't able to get this bipartisan border security bill passed?
Republicans love non-citizen workers.
Right,
They do not collect benefits.
right.
They do not collect Social Security. They come here, they work, and they pay taxes through all kinds of different means. So we are taking tax money from them. And then when they want to retire, there's no Social Security, there's no Medicaid, there's no Medicare. They don't have to pay out at all, and it is cheap labor. And there are lots of forces out there that would like to keep it that way.
Right.
Donald Trump has gotten in trouble for it, but he also does it through legal means. Like all the people working at his different resorts, golf resorts, Mar-a-Lago, these are all brought in. He goes and gets them and brings them in on special visas in order to work at his resorts. So Donald Trump loves immigration and immigrants coming in and doing the work. So this idea that they want to stop it is absurd.
Right, because they could have stopped it at any time and they did. And Donald Trump had 2 years with the Republican House and Republican Senate, and he made no efforts to build the border wall. He focused on tax cuts for everyone, and I put everyone in quotes, and he focused on repealing the Affordable Care Act. So he could have done something about the border, and he didn't. I want to know, what do you love most about your district, and where in the district are you from, by the way? I'm curious. I don't remember.
I live in Colts Neck. I
Mhm.
grew up in Tom's River. It's hard to pick something that I like the best. Uh,
Yeah.
right now, when I'm having breakfast in the morning, I see deer in my backyard. I've seen fox. Yesterday, I saw a baby deer. I think it was days old. It was just tiny. But I grew up in Tom's River and spent my summers in the water, on the bay, in the ocean. So it is just a fantastic place to be. Like you look around, it's like the mountains, they're not that far away. The city, it's not that far away. You head over to the Delaware Water Gap. Like it's a great place to be. And I want to say across the country, Ocean and Monmouth County have been voted one, two, and three of like the top places in the country to raise a family.
Mhm. So you're from Tom's River, live in Colts Neck,
Yeah.
and so Colts Neck, obviously, very both of those towns are very Republican, which I don't care about the party, but have you spoken to some of these Republican voters, and what do they think of your campaign?
I speak to the Republican voters all the time because these are their, I have lots of friends here in town. So when we go to like a high school graduation, um, maybe five of us are Democrats and 30 of them are Republicans. And it is really hard to have discussions where these things don't come up. When you're speaking to a Republican, it really depends on the type of Republican they are. As you said, conservative, liberal, it doesn't mean that much. Well, it doesn't mean what it used to anyway. Um, so there are certainly Republicans that they watch certain things and like that they just simply believe it, and they generally do not know about, say, Senator Langford's bill. Never heard of it, didn't know it was an option. All they hear is, Democrats want open borders. They are difficult to have a conversation with. Um, but others, we agree for different reasons. Like we were talking about climate change the other day, and the person was talking about plastic being in the fish that we eat, and therefore it's getting in our body. So they don't come at it from like, let's talk about climate change. They want to talk about it as, let's say, let's talk about pollution and how it is physically affecting my body right now. Now, we might come at it from different places, but we end up in the same place. So those type of Republicans are actually very easy to talk to.
Right. And a lot of those individuals in your district will are seeing the effects of climate change since you have Jersey Shore territory. You have a lot of beachland in CD4. So I
Yes.
I totally get what you're saying. And I want to get into another question. Um, who do you plan on voting for, Mitt Romney or Barack Obama?
Obama.
I'm kidding. Just wanted to do a little throwback. But in all seriousness, because I don't want to assume anything about my guess, but who are you going to vote for, Donald Trump or Joe Biden? If I had to guess, I'd like to know.
President Biden, without a doubt.
And how do you think Biden's presence on the ticket is going to help you or affect you in this election?
I think it's going to help me. I've always wanted Joe Biden. Go back to 2018. I knew that Joe Biden was the person that we needed. We
Hmm.
needed somebody with all the chaos, we needed somebody with experience. I wanted somebody who you can't get to. Everybody talks about day one. Most things don't happen on day one, especially with a new president. They're trying to figure out, where the keyboards are, where the pencils are. I wanted somebody who had lots of experience, who was going to walk in on day one, could, call up Angela Merkel on her cell phone and say, look, I don't have time to get to that stuff, but you know me. They were like, yes, Joe, we know you. And everything would just calm down. One of the things I liked about Joe Biden, and I'll call him Joe because he wasn't the president yet, um, when it came to the pandemic, when it came to the vaccines, he was already talking to the pharmaceuticals. He was already talking to the supply chains and working everything out. So literally on day one, a lot happened. That's what I wanted in a president. There are other people that I liked who wanted to run, but from 2018, I was on President Biden's wagon.
Me too. I was supporting him before he even put his hat in the ring, but we kind of knew it was going to happen. Thankfully, it did.
Yes.
Uh, I think he's been a very good president, and I think that what you said when it came to the vaccine, everyone brags about Operation Warp Speed. There was no distribution plan in effect. I mean, they were developed under the Trump administration, but Biden had to hit the ground running because by the time it was ready to be distributed, Trump knew he was on his way out, and he said, "Why should I do anything?" Because we all know that the former president doesn't do anything unless it helps him. He's a transactional individual. So I'm glad to hear that you think that that Biden will fire up the voters, especially the Democratic and maybe some independent voters in your district. And I wanted to also ask, what do you think about our Senate race going on?
Andy Kim. He is going to be our next senator. I like Andy. From the moment that he ran, he said that he was going to run. I was like, that is a fantastic idea. He's done a great job as a congressman. He was working for the government before that. Like he is a public servant. He is a great human being. And I couldn't have been happier when he said that he was going to run. Now, Dr. Campos Medina, she's fantastic. And I really hope to see her come out and run for something else. Uh, but I think she's a fantastic person. She has been working in the trenches for decades, and I think she's a force to be reckoned with also.
Interesting. Well, we only have a few minutes, but I will let you say anything else that you want to say about why this race is so important for the country and any final thoughts?
Sure. I mean, we didn't touch on the economy and what things cost for people. Like that's the first thing that people think about. And I never want to discount that. But to me, the thing that people need to worry about first is, are we going to keep our democracy? Number one. Number two, are we going to keep reproductive rights for women? If they go, they're not coming back for decades. So like these basic rights, our fundamental rights need to be protected. But if we look at, say, the economy, the US economy is the strongest in the world right now. The jobs reports are off every modern chart. Now, people will say, but what about the price of eggs? Well, I will go on about the avian flu that has caused farmers to kill 100 million chickens. There are less eggs, the price goes up. The price of gas, the gas went up quite a bit. Why? When you close down an economy or a crashing economy, and then you open it up, prices skyrocket. But what people don't know is when the price of oil was going down, Trump at the time did a deal with Saudi Arabia, Russia, and other oil countries to cut production. Why? To boost the price. What happened? The price went up. This isn't something I'm just saying. Trump bragged about it. Jared Kushner's bragging about it. You can look up these videos. The price at the grocery store has actually started to come down. Why did inflation go up? Again, when you crash an economy and then you try to bring it back and you have supply chain issues, prices go up. But we've also found out that 54% thereabouts of the price is nothing but price gouging. People have raised their prices because they could. A good example is Amazon, $100 a year, I think, for that membership. Well, suddenly it went to 120. Do you think Jeff Bezos was hurting for money and needed to raise it, or did he raise it because he could?
Right.
There's another thing that I don't hear much attention being paid is the price of housing and why it's going up. There are large investment firms who have always owned condominiums and trailer parks and that sort of thing. The new thing is they are vacuuming up single family homes. And they are telling us what they're going to do. The idea is that no one will own, everybody will rent, and according to one of them, everybody will be happy that way. Prices are going up because when you and I want to go and buy a house, I don't know your price range, but just say $500,000. That seems to be where houses are these days. You want to try to get it for $495, for $490. They walk in 510, they just buy it and they just walk away. And the prices are just going up. And soon, no one across America is going to be able to afford a house unless you're in that top 1%, or it's been handed down from the generation before. That needs to be not just stopped, but it needs to be reversed. One of the largest companies isn't even American. They're Canadian, from Toronto. These companies own tens of thousands of homes. So you have no chance of ever buying it. And when you want to rent, you'll rent whatever they say.
We're seeing
So,
the, I mean, I've always said that presidencies and the agendas take time to reveal themselves. What we are seeing before our eyes now is deregulation at its strongest, and it's not working for the middle class. The economy is strong, but the money has yet to trickle down, and it's not because of Biden that it hasn't trickled down. I don't see how Trump will make it any better. I think he's part of the reason why we're in the mess that we're in right now, or a big part of the reason why we're in the mess that we're in now.
well, you mentioned that word trickle down, has connotations going back decades.
Right.
This is what I think of trickle down economics. If you give more money to rich people, they'll have more money. Where's the mystery there?
Right, right.
You gave me more money,
a
I'd
lot.
have more money. So, like, we need to be talking about cutting taxes, cutting expenses for the middle class, bottom up, middle out. Like, that's how you grow America, not by giving more money to the wealthy.
So true. Well, we're out of time, but I thank you, Matthew Jenkins. Do you have a website, mattjenkinsforcongress.com?
Yes, sir. That's it.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on the Blue Dog Whisperer. Good luck with your race. You've got my support.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.